Some men find out their wives are cheating by accident. I kicked in a locked drawer and found out on purpose. It wasn't impulse. Not exactly. A locked drawer in my own damn house wasn't something I was going to ignore, and Madison never used to lock things. That alone was enough to make me sit in the kitchen, staring at the cheap metal lock for a good 5 minutes, hands wrapped around a lukewarm coffee mug, jaw tight. I thought about waiting, asking, but the truth was, I already knew what I'd find. So I walked to the garage, grabbed a flathead screwdriver, and popped it open. Folder. That was all. Tucked behind old bills and warranty papers. Plain manila. Nothing special. I almost laughed. It was always this simple. People think affairs are hidden in secret phone calls, in whispered meetings behind closed doors. In reality, they're buried under insurance statements and tax returns, waiting for someone who gives a damn to notice. Inside the folder, receipts, hotel charges at the Riverstone Inn, a few dinner bills, expensive, the kind she never let me take her to anymore. And then, the real kicker, legal documents. Half-completed divorce papers, with Henry Reynolds' signature right at the bottom. The name didn't surprise me. I'd seen him before, the kind of guy who shook your hand too hard while sizing you up, eyes scanning for weaknesses. He was the type who smelled like expensive cologne and a better-than-you attitude, the kind of guy who wore a $1,000 suit to a town where most men owned 2 pairs of boots and called it a wardrobe. Reynolds was a lawyer, always hanging around the town's wealthier side, handling contracts and estate planning. He wasn't one of us. Hell, he wasn't even one of them. He was just passing through, taking what he could, always angling for the next move. And now, he was trying to make my wife his next move. I sat back in my chair, staring at the papers. My pulse was steady, slow. No sudden rush of rage. No yelling, no throwing things. I wasn't that kind of man. The funny thing about running into burning buildings for a living, you learn to keep your head when everything around you is falling apart. I put the papers back exactly where I found them, closed the drawer, and locked it again. Then I went outside, grabbed my jacket off the hook, and headed to the Iron Stag. The bar was quiet this time of day. A couple of old-timers at the counter, nursing beers, arguing over some game on the radio. The place smelled like wood polish and last night's whiskey, the way bars should. Levi Edwards, owner, ex-military, built like a brick wall, was behind the counter, wiping a glass that didn't need wiping. He glanced up when I walked in, nodding once. Usual? Yeah. I took a stool at the end of the bar, elbows on the counter. Levi slid a glass of bourbon in front of me, then leaned against the bar, arms crossed. You look like shit. Appreciate it. He smirked. You in a talking mood? Or you just here to drink? I took a sip, let the burn settle. Found out Madison's screwing around. Levi let out a low breath, not quite a whistle. Damn. You sure? I nodded. Reynolds. His expression darkened. That son of a bitch. Yeah. We sat there for a moment, the quiet stretching between us. Levi wasn't the type to offer empty words, which was why I was here. The last thing I needed was someone telling me how to feel. After a while, he asked, "What's the plan?" I set the glass down, rolling it between my fingers. Not sure yet. He watched me for a second, then nodded. You will be. That was all he said. And that was all I needed. By the time I left the bar, the sun was setting over Rockridge, throwing long shadows across the streets. My truck was parked at the curb, dust settling on the hood. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cold air, hands in my jacket pockets. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to punch a wall. That wasn't my way. I was going to handle this the way I handled everything else. With control, with purpose. And when it was done, they'd both wish they'd never met me. I drove home slow, not because I was hesitating but because I needed to think. The bourbon sat warm in my gut, but my mind was clear. No storm of emotions, no shaking hands, just the steady hum of the engine and the weight of the truth pressing down like a load of bricks. I'd been in worse situations. Fire doesn't stop to ask how you feel about it before it burns a house down. You put it out or it takes everything. The porch light was on when I pulled up. Madison's car sat in the driveway, clean and polished, like everything she touched had to be. The contrast between that and my dust-covered truck made me shake my head. She was always straightening things, fixing the image. If only she'd been as careful about what she left lying around. I stepped inside. The smell of dinner, something with garlic, hung in the air, but I wasn't hungry. Madison was in the kitchen, humming to herself, a glass of wine in one hand, a wooden spoon in the other. She looked up and smiled like nothing had changed. "Hey, you're home late." "Stop by the bar," I said, kicking off my boots. The house felt too quiet. Or maybe I was just hearing things differently now. "Figured," she said, turning back to the stove. "Levi give you his usual life advice?" I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Something like that." She didn't look at me, but I saw her shoulders tense just enough to notice. She'd always been good at small talk, smoothing things over, making sure conversations stayed light. I used to appreciate it. Now it just felt like a distraction. "Busy day?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You?" Same old, same old." She turned, leaning against the counter, sipping her wine. "Had lunch with Claire, took Rusty to Quinn's for a trim." Nothing exciting. Nothing exciting. I let that sit between us, wondering how easy the lie came to her. Wondering how many nights she came home, kissed me on the cheek, and acted like she hadn't been tangled up in another man's sheets just hours before. She stepped closer, running a hand down my arm, tilting her head like she used to when she wanted me to talk. "You okay?" "Fine." I met her eyes, let the silence stretch. People rush to fill silence when they're nervous. She didn't. That told me everything. "All right," she said after a second, smiling like she hadn't just lied to my face. "Dinner's almost ready." I nodded and stepped back, heading for the shower. I needed time. Not to cool off, I wasn't heated. I just needed a plan. Under the hot water, I ran through my options. Some men would walk out, pack a bag, toss the ring in the sink, and disappear. Others would throw punches, get themselves locked up over a woman who already walked out on them in every way that mattered. I wasn't either of those men. No, this wasn't about pain. It was about control. About making sure I walked away on my terms, not crawling. I'd built a life from the ground up. I'd be damned if I let them burn it down. The first move was simple. Let her think everything was normal. Make her comfortable. People get careless when they think they've gotten away with something. And Reynolds? A man like that lived off the idea that he was always 3 steps ahead. He wouldn't see it coming when the ground disappeared under him. I toweled off, dressed, and stepped back into the kitchen just as Madison was setting the table. She looked up, smiling again, the picture of a devoted wife. "Just in time," she said, placing a plate in front of me. "Looks good," I said. I sat down, picked up my fork, and ate like a man who had nothing on his mind but dinner. Because that's what you do before a fire. You let everything settle. You let it spread unnoticed until it's too late to put out. Madison left early the next morning, same as always. Kissed me on the cheek before walking out the door, smelled like citrus shampoo and perfume I didn't recognize. "I'll be home late," she said. "Claire and I are getting dinner." I nodded, sipping my coffee, acting like I believed her. She hesitated just a second, like she was waiting for me to ask questions. I didn't. She left. Her car backed out of the driveway, tires crunching over gravel, then disappeared down the street. I rinsed my mug, dried my hands, and got to work. The first step was locking down the finances. I drove to the bank, spoke with a man I'd known for years, someone who understood how to move things without making noise. I pulled my personal savings into a separate account, locked it under my name only. The joint account? Left just enough to keep the lights on, nothing more. If Madison wanted to play house with a lawyer, she could learn how it felt to run one without my money. After that, I stopped by the Iron Stag. Levi was behind the bar, slicing limes, even though I'd never seen him serve a drink with one. "You need something, or you just here to brood?" I slid onto the stool. "Need a number." He wiped his hands on a rag, nodded. "What for?" "Pie." His eyebrows lifted, but he didn't ask why. Just reached under the bar, grabbed a business card from a stack near the register, and slid it over. "Guy's name is Nolanwood. Used him once when my ex was trying to run my ass through the ringer. Solid work, no bullshit." I pocketed the card. "Appreciate it." "You going nuclear?" "Not yet." He nodded, set the knife down. "You got a plan?" "Working on it." He smirked, shaking his head. "If I was Reynolds, I'd start running." I didn't answer. Just left a 20 on the bar and walked out. The PI's office was in a strip mall next to a laundromat, smelled like burnt coffee and stale carpet. Nolanwood was about 50, thick around the middle, thinning hair, looked like he'd seen more marriages end than begin. He barely glanced up when I walked in, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. "You got a name?" I sat down. Bo Anderson. What's the job? I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, slid it across the desk. Her. And him. He studied the pictures. Madison at the Farmers, Nolan at Reynolds outside his office. Affair. Yeah. You want the works? Photos, video, timestamps? All of it. He nodded, tossing the phone back. $2,000. I pulled the cash from my pocket, set it on the desk. He didn't count it, just tucked it in a drawer. Give me a week. I stood up. You got 3 days. He grunted but didn't argue. By the time I left, the sun was starting to set. I drove back home, parked in the driveway, sat there for a minute watching the house. The porch light flickered, needed a new bulb. The grass was overgrown. Little things I'd let slip, thinking I had a home to take care of. Turned out I'd just been keeping up a front. I walked inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge, took it out back. Rusty trotted after me, flopped down on the porch with a sigh. I scratched behind his ears, took a long pull from the bottle. 3 days. That was all I needed. Then it wouldn't be my problem anymore. Didn't need 3 days. He called after 2. Got what you need, he said. His voice was flat, businesslike. Where you want to meet? Your office. 20 minutes. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and left. Madison had been in and out the last couple of days, same routine, same excuses. Smiling, kissing my cheek, saying she had errands or dinner plans. I hadn't asked questions. She'd taken that as trust. That was her mistake. Had the file waiting when I walked in. Thick folder, a flash drive sitting on top. Everything's timestamped. Photos, videos, audio from the hotel lobby. You want a highlight reel? I took the drive, ignored the folder. I'll go through it myself. He nodded. You need anything else? No. Good. He tapped the desk. She's not gonna see this coming. I didn't answer. Just walked out, drove home, and sat in the truck with the engine running. I didn't need to open the folder. I already knew what was inside. I'd seen enough of Reynolds to know exactly how he operated, methodical, arrogant, treating people like contracts to be negotiated. And Madison? She'd fallen right into it, thinking she was making choices when really she just signed her name on the dotted line. I killed the engine, went inside. Madison was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine. She looked up, smiled. You hungry? I was just about to start dinner. I set my keys on the counter, pulled out a chair, sat down. We should go out? She blinked, caught off guard. Out? Yeah. Dinner. Willow House. She hesitated, glancing at the clock. I assure. Let me change. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she smoothed her hands over her jeans, in the half-second pause before she turned toward the bedroom. She hadn't expected this. Probably thought I was distant because of work, or because I was just the quiet type. She had no idea. The restaurant was half full when we got there. Soft lighting, quiet conversation, the kind of place people went to celebrate anniversaries. We'd been here before. Back when things were real. Before she decided she wanted something else. We got a table near the window. She looked good, a hair done, makeup just enough to make it look like she hadn't tried. It used to work on me. Not tonight. She picked up the menu, acting casual. This is nice. I leaned back, studying her. You happy? The question caught her off guard. She lowered the menu. What? You happy? I said again, keeping my voice even. With us. With your life. She blinked. Forced a smile. Of course. Why would you ask that? I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and set it on the table. Because I know. The color drained from her face. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Just stared at it like it might explode. Go on, I said, nodding toward it. Pick it up. She swallowed, but didn't move. Boe. Take it, I said, voice still calm. You should at least know what I know. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. She turned it over in her palm, staring like it held the weight of every lie she'd told. I let the silence stretch, let her sit in it. She swallowed. Don't. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. Don't lie. Don't explain. Just listen. Her lips parted, but she closed them again, nodding. You think I didn't notice? I asked. The late nights. The distance. The way you started talking about our life like it was something you'd already moved past. She looked away. I shook my head. You weren't careful, Madison. You thought you were, but you weren't. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand, stopping her. I'm not here to argue. Not here to fight. I just want you to understand something. I let the moment settle before I continued. You had choices. I gave you time. I gave you space. You could have come to me. You could have talked. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. Not tonight. But you didn't, I said. You made your bed. And now you get to lie in it. The waiter came by. hesitated, sensing the tension. Would you like to order? I didn't look at him, just pushed my chair back, stood up. She'll have the check. Then I walked out, leaving her with the flash drive, the silence, and the mess she'd made. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cold night air keep me sharp. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. That part had burned out, leaving something steadier behind. The kind of calm you get when you know exactly where things are headed. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Rusty trotted up from the porch, tail wagging, happy as ever. I scratched his head, let out a breath, and walked inside. Madison didn't come home that night. I expected that. She'd sit in her car, maybe drive around, maybe go to Claire's, maybe straight to Reynolds. None of it mattered. I put the fire out. Now all that was left was the cleanup. The next morning I got to work. First stop was the lawyer's office. Not Reynolds's. I wasn't stupid. I had my own guy, one I'd used before when I was buying up rental properties. Older, sharp, no patience for bullshit. When I walked in, he was already waiting, reading over the paperwork I'd sent ahead. You don't waste time, he said, flipping the page. Never saw the point. He nodded. You're in a good position. House is in your name, business is yours, finances are locked up tight. Only thing joint is the checking account, and from the looks of it, she's got nothing left in there. She doesn't. His mouth twitched like he wanted to smile but didn't. So what do you want? Fast. Clean. She gets what I give her, nothing more. He leaned back, nodding. It won't be a fight. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. But Reynolds. He exhaled through his nose. He might try something. Legal leverage. Pressure. Maybe threaten court just to squeeze you. I shook my head. He won't. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. You sure? Yeah, I said. I'll make sure of it. He watched me a second longer, then nodded. All right, let's get started. 2 hours later, I walked out with a plan. Madison would get the papers by the end of the day. She'd know she had nothing to fight for. Reynolds would know it too. Next stop was the bank. I closed out what little was left in the joint account, had the statements printed. Just a formality. By the time I walked back out into the sunlight, I felt lighter. Not happy. Not satisfied. Just done. Back home, I cracked a beer on the porch, let Rusty drop his head onto my boot. The phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the screen. Madison. I let it ring. She called again. Then she texted. We need to talk. Please. I took another sip of beer, watching the sky go from blue to gold. Then I shut the phone off. She'd had all the time in the world to talk. By sundown, I had my answer. A silver sedan pulled up, sleek and polished, right out of place in my driveway. Reynolds stepped out, fixing his cufflinks like he thought this was a boardroom negotiation. He shut the door, looked around, taking in the house, the truck, the dog. Then he straightened his tie and walked up the porch steps. Beau, he said, nodding like we were old friends. I didn't get up, just looked at him. Reynolds. He let out a breath like this was exhausting for him. Look, I get it. You're upset. Things got complicated. But there's no reason we can't handle this like adults. I took another sip of beer. That right? Yes, he said, nodding. Madison doesn't want to fight. She's willing to be reasonable. If we can all just... You think I don't know how men like you work? I cut in. You think this is my first time dealing with somebody who thinks they can talk their way out of a mess they made? His jaw tightened. You took a woman who had everything she needed and made her think she wanted more. I said, my voice steady. You fed her a fantasy. And now, when it's crashing down, you think I'm gonna play fair. He sighed, straightened his jacket. Look, we don't need to turn this into a war. Just give her a fair split and we can. I laughed. Just once. Short. Fair split. I shook my head. She lost that option the second she let you into my house. His face darkened. Legally, she has rights. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on my knees. Legally, you and I both know she's got nothing. Silence stretched between us. He knew I was right. He'd seen the paperwork by now. I could see it in his face, the way his mind worked through options. Then his expression shifted, lips pressing into a thin line. "You think this makes you the winner?" "No," I said. "I think it makes me free." He studied me for a second longer, then let out a breath. "Fine. Have it your way." He turned, walked down the steps, back toward his car. I let him go. Rusty lifted his head, ears twitching as the car pulled away. I scratched behind his ears, watching taillights disappear down the road. That was it. That was all that was left. Just the aftermath. Just the ashes. The papers went through without a fight. No court dates, no drawn-out arguments. Madison signed, and that was that. Maybe she thought Reynolds would be enough to carry her through whatever came next. Maybe she finally understood there was no saving it. Either way, she was out. I didn't hear from her again, not directly. A couple of mutual acquaintances passed along news she was staying at Reynolds's place, keeping her head down. Word was she didn't show her face much around town anymore. That didn't surprise me. Small towns have long memories. She could leave, but her reputation would always be waiting if she ever came back. Didn't matter to me. The house felt different without her in it. Quieter, but not empty. Not in the way I expected. I got up early, worked hard, came home tired. It felt good, having something to fix, something to rebuild. I replaced the porch lights, cut the grass, fixed the cabinet hinge she always complained about but never got around to doing herself. The first Friday night after the divorce was finalized, I stopped by the Iron Stag. The place was busier than usual, folks filling the tables, voices thick in the air. Levi was at the bar, pouring drinks, eyes landing on me as I walked in. "Well, if it ain't Rockridge's most eligible bachelor," he said, smirking. I shook my head, sliding onto a stool. "Get that out of your system now." "Can't promise that," he said, setting a beer in front of me. "Town's been talking, . They'll get bored." "Maybe." He leaned against the counter. "You." I took a sip. "What about me?" "You bored." I looked around the room at the same faces, the same walls, the same music playing from the jukebox. It should have felt old, like I'd outgrown it. Instead, it just felt solid. Reliable. A place that hadn't changed even when everything else had. "Not yet," I said. He nodded, satisfied with that. The door swung open, letting in the cool night air. I glanced over out of habit and caught a familiar face, Quinn Bailey, the pet groomer. She was shaking her head at something one of her friends said, laughing as she brushed dog hair off her sleeves. She spotted me, gave a small wave before heading toward the back. Levi followed my gaze, smirked. "She's been asking about you." "That right?" "Yep." He poured himself a drink, leaned on the counter. "And I told her you were too damn stubborn to make a move." I exhaled through my nose, took another sip. "Appreciate that." He chuckled. "Just saying. You got a clean slate now." I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The truth was I wasn't in a rush for anything. I'd spent too long living in someone else's expectations, trying to hold together something that was already broken. Yeah? I was just taking things day by day. Fixing what needed fixing. Living on my own terms. The bar filled up more as the night went on, but I stayed where I was, drinking slow, talking when it felt right, letting the noise settle around me. Eventually, I felt a presence next to me, heard a familiar voice. "Rusty's due for a trim," Quinn said, pulling up a stool. I glanced over. "That's so." She nodded, grinning. "Unless you're going for the wild dog of the mountains look. He seems happy enough." He'd probably be happier if he didn't have half a pound of dirt in his fur. I smirked, took another sip. "I'll bring him by." "Good," she said. "Maybe you'll actually stick around for a conversation next time." I looked at her, at the easy way she said it, the way she wasn't pushing, wasn't expecting anything. Just offering. "Maybe," I said. She smiled, stood up, and rejoined her friends. Levi watched her go, then looked at me. "Maybe?" he echoed, raising an eyebrow. I shrugged. "One thing at a time." He laughed, shaking his head. "Took you long enough?" I didn't argue. Just finished my beer, let the night settle around me. The past was done. The fire was out. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. A year passed. Not all at once, but in small pieces, one job at a time, one quiet morning at a time, one less memory of her at a time. Life didn't feel different all at once, but it shifted in ways I could feel. I woke up earlier. Slept better. The house looked better than it ever had, the kind of place a man could take pride in. The truck ran smooth after I finally fixed that rattle in the engine. The town, same as always, still had its small-town rhythm, but I wasn't walking around with a weight on my chest anymore. I ran into Madison once. Grocery store. She was alone, standing in the produce aisle, holding a bag of apples like it mattered. She caught my eye, hesitated. I didn't. Just walked past her, grabbed a six-pack from the cooler, and checked out. Reynolds? He was gone. Moved out of Rockridge about 6 months after I cut him off at the knees. Last I heard, he tried setting up shop in the city, but a few well-placed rumors about his personal conflicts of interest had clients pulling out faster than he could recover. He'd land on his feet. Guys like him always did, but not before taking some bruises. That was enough for me. The last loose end tied itself up without me lifting a finger. One night, I was at the Iron Stag, sitting in my usual spot, nursing a drink while Levi wiped down the bar. A couple of guys near the jukebox were talking, voices just loud enough to carry. Did you hear about Madison Anderson? I didn't move. Just listened. Yeah, the other guy said. Heard she left town. Didn't work out with that lawyer, huh? Guess not. Can't say I'm surprised. Girl torched a good thing. Levi glanced at me, saw I wasn't reacting, and kept cleaning. The guys kept talking, but I stopped listening. Didn't need to. Some stories just finished themselves. I tossed some cash on the bar and left. Walked outside, let the cold air hit my face. The sky was clear, stars sharp against the black. My truck was parked under the street lamp, Rusty sitting in the bed, waiting. I climbed in, scratched behind his ears. He let out a happy sigh, tail thumping. I started the engine, took the long way home. Windows down, music low, the kind of drive where you don't think too much because there's nothing left to think about. The house was waiting when I pulled up. Porch light glowing warm, grass trimmed, fence mended. A man's house should feel solid. Should feel like it belongs to him, not like he's just passing through. This one did now. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, took it out back, sat on the steps with Rusty at my feet. Wind moved through the trees, quiet and steady. I took a slow drink, let the silence settle. Quinn had left a message earlier. Something about grabbing coffee. She didn't push. She knew I'd call when I was ready. Maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, I was good. Some men spend their whole lives trying to put out a fire that already burned them down. Not me. I walked through it, came out the other side, and kept walking. Didn't look back. Didn't need to.